You know that Keeley Companies is all about fostering the world-class culture through their incredible cultural pillars. Well, it was time to add a seventh cultural pillar, Keeley Green. Guided by the mission to raise the sustainability standards by which they design, build, operate, and live, Keeley Green is dedicated to using a holistic approach to leave a positive impact on our environment, create a future that is sustainable for generations to come. In the words of Rusty Keeley, we are just getting started. You can learn more about that just getting started mentality and all the work they do by visiting my friends at Keeley Companies online at KeeleyCompanies.com.
Welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. John is the two-time national best-selling author of On Fire and In Awe. He's a world-class inspirational speaker, the host of the Live Inspired podcast, and he's the real-life inspiration behind the major motion picture Soul on Fire. Each week, John interviews extraordinary individuals about their life stories so you can more fully live your life story. Here's your host, John O'Leary.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Live Inspired podcast with John O'Leary. You know, as a speaker, occasionally I have the great joy of being in the room when another performer shows up on stage and shares their heart, shares their story, shares their testimony, and shares the ability that we have through all of our lives to impact the world around us for good. I'm always moved by those stories, and occasionally I am so moved that I invite these individuals to join us on this podcast. And today you're going to hear from one such awesome example. His name is Erik Rees. You'll want to remember that name because you'll want to eventually, I think, book him for a conference near you. He is the founder of Never Ever Give Up, NEGU, which is a global movement inspired by the life of his daughter, Jessie. What began as a father walking through unimaginable struggle and then eventually grief with his daughter has become a mission that has delivered some 600,000 JoyJars. We'll talk more about that during our conversation, to children around the country and around the world battling cancer. Today, Erik joins us to share how the extraordinary life and death of his daughter, Jessie, what she ultimately taught him through her struggle and through her generosity, and what that journey means for the rest of us today and ours. It's an incredible story. My friends, you will laugh, you will cry, you will feel, and you'll want to do more for the world that is longing for it. So I'm just going to get out of the way and bring him on. My friends, buckle up. Get your favorite Live Inspired journal as I bring on my friend and now yours. His name is Erik Rees. Erik, brother, welcome to Live Inspired with John O'Leary.
Well, John, thank you so much for having me on. It's such an honor. And yeah, let's live inspired.
Well, we're about to, man, because I'm going to step off the stage and bring you on. You and I met first in sunny San Diego at a conference. I spoke first, then sat down in the chairs, and some guy named Erik Rees took the stage. And the moment you began speaking, I said first to myself and now to my listeners, this dude's story and his life and his legacy, it needs to be shared with the world. It's so profound. It's so meaningful. I'm so in awe of you, man. So welcome on to our program.
Well, thank you. I'm just truly honored. Truly honored.
For the folks who don't really know yet what you and I are going to be talking about, if you were to meet someone at a conference center, like you and I met in the hallway afterwards, and you hand me a card and I say, NEGU, what kind of work do you do, Erik? How do you respond to that?
I would say I have the privilege of encouraging children fighting cancer to never, ever give up.
And it would probably lend itself to me saying, why do you do that kind of work? How do you respond?
Well, on March 3rd, 2011, my wife and I were told that our middle child, Jessie, she was 11 years old at the time, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Obviously, the worst news any parent could ever get is not only your child has cancer, but it's terminal and you have 12 to 18 months with her. Jess was outpatient. There was no way to cure what she had, so she went on a clinical trial, and that consisted of daily trips to the local children's hospital here in Orange County, California. as we started into the treatment plan, we were leaving the parking garage one day, and Jess was sitting in the back seat. My wife was next to me, and she said, "Mom, Dad, when do all the other kids get to come home?" And I remember pointing to the third floor of the hospital as we were leaving the parking garage and said, "Jess, there's other kids that have different diagnosis than you that for their cancer, they have to stay days and weeks and months." And the next words out of her mouth has literally changed the tapestry of my life, because she simply said, "How can we help them?" And to be honest, John, I didn't care about them. I was trying to save my daughter's life. But Jess just had a burden for these kids that couldn't leave the hospital. So she ended up creating these things called JoyJars, which are 64-ounce plastic jars filled with new games, toys, and activities for kids. And she came up with this motto called NEGU, NEGU, that stands for Never Ever Give Up. We've now reached over 500,000 children fighting cancer across all 50 states and now 53 countries. And while we celebrate that, unfortunately, 400,000 children are diagnosed with cancer a year. And I like to tell people, like, we don't cure cancer. We cure bad days caused by childhood cancer through all of the different programs that we offer to kids and super sibs and to parents. But, I can't wait for the cure people to find cures and put me out of business. That'd be a great day. But until that time, Jess asked Stacy and I on her 12th birthday, how cool would it be if every kid fighting cancer received a Joy Jar and was encouraged to never, ever give up? So that's what I do.
I don't know how long you spoke, maybe 8 minutes when we were in San Diego together, and I cried 3 different times. A couple times with sorrow, and then the final time with this profound sense of pride and joy, like just proud of you, Dad, and joy for the gift that you're providing others and the legacy you're living out loud through your lives. And so I'm looking forward to crying with you during this episode and unpacking this story, not only your family story, but why this family story matters to the families tuning in right now. This is a big one. So let's back up a little bit before the diagnosis and even before Jess is part of your life. You mentioned to me that you were a pastor in a pretty big church in California. Talk about growing up. I mean, did you grow up in the faith? Did you find it later on in life?
John, unfortunately, I didn't grow up in the faith. I grew up in what I call the Munster household. My wife came from the Beaver Cleaver household, but I came from the Munster household, where I was raised by a very, very abusive alcoholic father. I was his punching bag, to be completely transparent. And at the age of 16, I moved out, put myself through college. I initially went to Oregon State University, and I unfortunately took advantage of the fraternity system that it offered. And I remember when I was much younger, I had this phrase, and I would write it all over my peaches in school and different things. And it was called "Make It Happen."
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in my frat room, looking at the cork board where I had pinned it, and I looked at my grades, and I'm like, I'm not making it happen. I'm having a lot of fun, but I'm not making it happen. And so I actually called up my grandma, who at the time lived in Long Beach, California. And I said, "Grandma, can I come down and live with you? And I just need a fresh start." She said, "Absolutely." I originally, growing up and getting into school and stuff, I wanted to be a physical therapist. I just love the idea of helping people. I love sports. And so I just wanted to be in that kind of realm, and that field was my pursuit. But unfortunately, my grades in my first couple of years of college really made my GPA not meet the demand and the criteria to get into PT school. So I needed to get a job when I'm down here in California, and I go to work at a private health club. And I remember May 18th, 1990, I walked into this health club to interview, and there's this beautiful lady on the other side welcoming me into the club. And I was like, "I'm here to meet this gentleman's name." And she said, "Oh, that's my father. He's over here. He's ready to meet with you." So ended up getting the job, and I start working there, and I am now working regularly with this girl named Stacy. And at the time she had a boyfriend, and I'm like, okay. And so it took me 6 months to get him to go away. And I asked her, I said, would you like to go on a date? And she said, if you go to church with me. And I'm like, I'll go wherever you tell me to go, because like in high school, I was part of what was called FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I went to those, but I pretty much went to those because the cheerleaders were there. But those were some times when like early seeds of faith were put into my ecosystem and just trying to learn about faith and stuff, because my dad was a complete atheist. We never went to church, he didn't talk about it at all. So when Stace asked me to go to church with her, I'm like, sure. So fast forward, we're going to church on a regular basis. And on Father's Day, 1993, the pastor at the time was doing a message that if you didn't have an earthly father, but you have a heavenly father that loves you and accepts you, stand up and just shout out, Father, I want to come home. And I did that. And wow. My life has forever been changed because of that decision. And it was wonderful. Got baptized. Later, my wife and I get married. And we moved to a different part of Orange County. And the loan officer said, hey, do you go to church? And we're like, yeah, we go to this church in this other part. And he's like, well, I'm part of a church that just moved out of high school onto this big piece of land. So in 1994, Stacey and I started going there. We wanted to meet some other young couples. And so I remember taking the little communication card, writing any other young married couples. And so I get a call from the church. And at that time, Saddleback had these kind of training programs that you could volunteer to go through and stuff. So I started going through these classes, and I was put in charge of what was called the Young Marrieds Fellowship Group. And that basically I was volunteering to help young married couples meet one another and find community and small groups and all these kinds of things. And so I started doing that. And I would report in every so often to this gentleman named John Baker, who was the pastor that I was reporting to as a volunteer at the time. And he's like, this is great. Would you ever want to join our staff? And I'm like, that's literally the first words out of my mouth was, how much do you pay? And I said that because ever since growing up, and even before I had children, I always told myself, my kids will never come home with a key around their neck. Because that's what I did. I came home to a lonely, empty home with a key around my neck. And so when I asked how much you pay, it was more like, I don't want to force my wife to have to work when she should be home raising our children, which is what she wanted to do. I know some moms and stuff continue working, which is beautiful. But for me, I wanted to be able to provide that for my family and for my wife. And so long story short, we were able to figure out some finances, and I started working at Saddleback in 1996 and had a great run, wrote a bunch of books, traveled around the world, training pastors and church leaders and all those kinds of things. And, then Rick writes a book called Purpose Driven Life that just, was a skyrocketing bestseller and all these kinds of things. So it was an incredible journey. But one of the greatest life lessons that I learned from Rick, I actually ended up coining it to a title of a book I wrote, was only you can be you. Because I remember him telling me, Erik, only you can be you. Don't try to be somebody else. Just be who God made you to be. And you will find fulfillment and fruitfulness in just being you. Because growing up with a dad that I never really pleased, I always sought trying to please him, even though he beat me up. You want, as a young child, you want your father to value you and to appreciate you and to love you and care for you. Rick, being who he was at the time and just very discerning, he just basically said, Erik, you got to surrender this pursuit of trying to be somebody you're not, and find and give yourself permission to be who God made you to be. And that was a life-changing journey that I went on to really find comfort in who I am. And then, everything was going good until March 3rd, 2011.
Oh. Listen, I know we took a bit of a detour there to get the backstory, but I think it informs
who I'm speaking to, who people are hearing from, and perhaps what prepared you in some regard to weather a storm that many of us can't fathom. So let's talk about the journey forward from the diagnosis. How did you know that Jessie was sick? How'd you even know anything was going on?
All of our kids, when they were younger, they were part of this big swim club here in Orange County. One day, Jess was saying that she was having headaches and she was getting dizzy doing the backstroke. So we didn't really think much about it. We went and had her vision tested because she was also saying she had some blurred vision. We were up in Long Beach at a swim meet that her older sister was swimming in, and Jessie and I decided to take a walk. And we went into a candy store, and I'm walking behind her, and she's navigating, but her head's tilted just slightly, but she's still walking straight. I'm like, Jess, what are you looking at? She goes, oh, just all these candies and stuff. I was like, okay, look at me for a second. So I remember grabbing this big lollipop that, the big candy one, the giant lollipops. I'm like, okay, can you see this? And she's like, yes, but her head's tilted. I'm like, make your head straight, but can you see this lollipop? She said, yeah, I see two. I'm like, okay, that's probably not good. We get her home, get her in to see a doctor. They recommend an MRI. The MRI comes, and she has what's called diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma, DIPG, 100% fatal. And it's basically a tumor in her brainstem that is intertwined everywhere. It's not like a solid mass that you can go in and pull out. And yeah, it crushed me because I had two goals when I decided to be a dad, was to always provide and to always protect for my kids. And I could no longer protect my daughter. And it was hard. It was challenging. We tried to give Jessie the best treatment plan and all those different types of things, but she was obviously the shining light in the darkest time, just because she was choosing to want to help other kids. And it was some of the greatest time just being with her in the garage and just making JoyJars, and she would just pack them full and want to deliver them the next day, and seeing other kids smile when she would hand them to them. It was special.
So the first time I cried when you were speaking was when you talked about you had two goals as a father, provide and protect. And I'd never stated my goals in that way, but same. Like what dad does not just want to provide and protect his babies. And the
Yeah.
way you shared that and the vulnerability with which you shared it and the way the entire room pivoted afterwards, like you had our hearts when you shared that the way you did. And then you started unpacking the story of Jess. And you talked about the 30 radiation treatments and the chemo, and you talked about how she was scared of needles, but had been poked a couple hundred times during this process. And so I'm thinking about all this pain and struggle and fear and trepidation that I would have as a young person going through this, that I did have as a young person going through my treatments. I wasn't worried about other patients, man. I wanted out. I
Yeah.
wanted out of burn care. And if that's not going to work, I want out of life. But I'm not worried about other patients. That's me as a child. Your little warrior. Whew, man. She's leaving broken and bloated and pained from another treatment, one of a litany. And she says to you, Daddy, when do the other kids get to go home?
Yeah.
And it just blew me away that her focus was not on her, the pain or the hope. It was on others.
When we got home after she said that, because Jess at the time didn't realize she was going to die, we chose to just say, because we believe in miracles, and we thought, you know what, we're just going to do everything we can and go to every treatment and all this kind of stuff. So she was just thinking this is just part of the journey I'm on.
Yeah.
And that was the decision Stacey and I made, is that we didn't want her to not have joy and just sit there and worry. When we got her home, we had put her on the couch. Stacey and I went into her office to kind of huddle up and talk about what the doctors were telling us. And we had come out and she had actually got some of her brown paper lunch bags and she was writing smile and brave and courageous. And I was like, what are you doing? She goes, well, I want to put my Beanie Babies in these and I could take them
Oh,
to the
dude.
kids. And I'm like, you're serious about this? She says, yeah, I really want to do something for the kids that can't leave the hospital. And so we ended up talking to the hospital and they said yes, but they couldn't use the brown paper bags. They had to be something different. So Jessie found a jar and thought about that. And then her middle name was Joy. And so Joy and Jars just went perfect together. Even the fact that, like, I don't know by this time how many years, multiple years, the internet is around. And I go to GoDaddy and type in JoyJars, and nobody has ever taken the URLs. I'm just like, why wouldn't somebody have come up with this before? Um, but it was crazy. Yeah. I mean, she just loved the idea of, she'd pack them. She had her certain rules about it. But boy, did she love to deliver them.
What kind
She
of stuff is she jamming in those jars?
One of her rules was no cheesy toys. So she would shop online at all kinds of different places, and then the toys would show up at the house, and she would unpack them, and she would make some for girls, some for boys, different ages. But like every one of her Joy Jars, even now, always has to have a rubber duck. She just loved little rubber duckies. She loved whoopee cushions, but usually like a deck of cards, Uno cards, crayons, something to color with, a coloring pad, fuzzy, warm socks because hospital rooms are cold, um, a beanie because a lot of these children lose their hair, and then other different types of games and activities, depending on the gender and the age group that she was making them for at the time.
You're going to lose your daughter here, and yet before you do, she is going to help hand assemble 3,000 jars. And whew, man,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
she
come
had a
on.
pursuit, and yeah, she just loved going in the garage. She'd have some friends over from the swim team because she used to say, Dad, I feel lonely and limited. And I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, well, I can't go to swim. I can't go to church. I can't go to school. And I feel limited because of what cancer was doing. It like her mode of transportation was piggyback
Right.
rides because her lower extremities were not following up the way that she should. She continued to do it till about late November of 2011, and then things just unfortunately started getting the tumor was back and it was growing and it was going to impact her, and
What
that was one
what
of the
was it like
hardest
for you, Dad,
conversations.
when you are in a medical center and you see this little girl who you know is an inch away from no longer being upright, and you see her pulling a little red wagon filled with jars and room by room just distributing. Like, Dad, what are you feeling?
Just proud, inspired,
Hmm.
grateful for the time that we would have together doing those things. Sometimes in awe because I was just like, why are we here? I don't want to be here. you
Right.
know, she would always tell the kids, never ever give up. And that's why we keep doing it, is because of that motto. I mean, one of the hardest conversations that we had to have with Jess was that the tumor was, she obviously knew things were changing in her body. And I was like, hon, this might end with you moving to heaven. And she said, will I know anybody there? That was hard because I didn't want my girl to be frightened. And so, oh, remember grandpa this and grandpa that. And, you're just trying to quickly come up with something so she's not frightened. But that was a hard conversation to have with at that time, she was 12. And I don't know if dogs go to heaven, but we had just lost a dog. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure Kobe and Bruin will be there. And she smiled about that. And I was like, yeah, you're going to be responsible for them. Um, I was just trying to lighten the fear that you could see she was processing.
So you're praying with this little girl and loving this little girl and encouraging this little girl to follow her own advice, which is never ever give up. And then your wife
wakes you up early. I think it's January 5th, 2012, and says, I'm really having a tough time waking her up this morning. Take us forward from there.
Jess was complaining again about headaches, and Stace just said, "Hey, I'm just going to leave Jess on the couch and I'll sleep next to her." So I go upstairs, go to bed. And about 4 a.m., she comes in and wakes me up. She said, "Hon, I can't wake Jess up." I'm like, "What?" She goes, "I can't wake Jess up." And I'm like, "Oh no, this is the day that the train arrives to take her to heaven." And so I come downstairs and she's a little coherent, mumbling a little bit. Last time she didn't say love you, she said love you. Um, but yeah, that was a tough day to finally see everything that you wished never was going to happen. We call the hospice team and have them come and make her as comfortable as possible. Just played worship music for her and prayed over her. And yeah, then she took her last breath, and having to tell Shea, her older sister, and JT, her younger brother, that Jess was going to go to heaven was brutal, because they're innocent too. They don't deserve this at all. But now they have a notch in their belt that they wish is not there, but it's just the life that they now carry. That was hard. It was hard to see my wife in so much pain.
I've never lost a child. My friends who have say as difficult as that day is, another day that is always extraordinarily difficult is the day of the funeral. My friend, at her funeral, there were 9,000 people who either
Yeah.
were there or who tuned in live to celebrate this life. I mean, I'll be darn lucky to have 9 people somewhere in the church, and 5 of them have the last name O'Leary, and they got to go, man. Dad's up there in the front, man. We best be there on time for it. So you, Dad, walk us through what you experienced that day.
There was no doubt that I was going to do my daughter's service. I just couldn't imagine somebody else doing it. And obviously had preached before and done other people's services and stuff. And it was one of those things that was a mix of emotion of pain and peace at the same time. And to see the turnout of just the people that filled the various worship centers and places that we have gathering and set up TVs and stuff, and to hear a couple hundred people gave their life to the Lord that day, and it was an honor, obviously, to officiate or facilitate Jessie's celebration of life service.
I had the profound honor of eulogizing my dad on May 30th this past year. He passed away, and a week or so later was able to stand in front of a church filled with people and share with them why I love that man so much. What's one thing you remember saying about your daughter that you wanted to share with them gathered, but you also want to make sure we hear loud and clear today?
I think my 2 or 3 points was live courageously, love constantly, and lead compassionately. And I would say those are still today the hallmarks that I try to lead by. Because if I can be courageous, if I can be compassionate and help people in the worst times of their lives, then I feel like I'm fulfilling what I should be doing. That was a special time, but yeah, that's the point across. Because Jess, she lived like the name of your podcast. She lived inspired and ended up inspiring a wave of people around the world. I remember when I came home once from work and she says, "Daddy, 50,000." I'm like, "What?" "That's how many followers I have on my fan page." And I'm like, "Oh, that's awesome, Jess." She just loved the idea that people were sharing about JoyJars, because that's how the word started getting out. Because then I think at that time we were like at 20 hospitals that we were shipping to.
I lost a friend in college, and his name is Mark. He's one of my best buddies. He loved St. Louis Cardinals baseball, and so did I. And after he passed away, it took me a long time to go to a baseball game again. Um, your little girl loved serving others and loved bringing joy into their lives through these jars. The work was originally done in the garage. It's expanded a little bit since then, but it started in the garage. Did you think that after she passed away that you might be done with joy jars?
Great question, John. Yes, but I remember so vividly. Stacy and I sat down with Shea and JT after Jess had moved to heaven, and we said, should we close this chapter or write a new chapter? And her big sister said, Dad, Jesse's motto was never ever give up. How can we? So we all put our hands over the kitchen island, the same kitchen island where she made her first joy jars, and just said 1, 2, 3 for Jess. And we haven't looked back. And it's hard. Raising money is not easy, but it's my responsibility, along with some other people that I get the honor to have on our team here. Now we're close to 600,000 joy jars going out, and we have all these other programs, and we're helping families financially. And our son just wrote his first, or directed and produced his first short film called White Room, which is about his grief journey with his losing his sister. So we're going to now start helping families and helping people in grief not sit silent. We can't support them because that's not our profession, but we can encourage them to share and seek help. And so the name of this new program will be called Be Strong, Seek Help.
These little jars, I saw it take place at our conference. The joy that they bring into the people assembling them. Why do you think something so small and insignificant, a few bucks here and there, like it's not big.
Right.
Why do you think it brings such joy to the people, part of the process of making them? And then why do you think it brings such joy to the super siblings, the families, the kids suffering with cancer that receive them?
Well, I think for the people that host the mobile joy factory like AT&T did and had their employees stuff in the jars, there was a season where corporations just wrote checks. And there's been a pivot over the last 10 or so years. Obviously, COVID put a pause on it. But employees, especially the emerging generations, they want to do something. They want to put their hands to work. They want to know like they really made a difference. And so I really think part of why employees enjoy stuff in the joy jars and stuff is it gives them a sense of completion, because they pick up a jar that's empty and they have to own that jar until it's completely full. And they have to make it the best it can be, because the next person that's going to grab it is a child fighting cancer. So I think that they take a little pride in knowing that. And then they have fun because they will kind of compare theirs to the person they're next to and say, hey, look what I did. Look what, because one of Jesse's rules were no butts or barcodes in the joy window. And they're like, oh, I see a barcode. You're going to get in trouble, quality control. And then for the kids, if your listeners ever want to donate a like on any of our social handles at Team NEGU, you'll see children, countless children with their joy jar smiling. What kid doesn't want to get a gift? I mean, gifts are cool. And so for them, they get a gift and it's filled with a bunch of cool stuff that they get to play with because they're sitting in a hospital room. And so one, I think it's just the practicality of they get a gift and it's fun.
Yep.
But two, I think it's like, wow, somebody thought of me. I'm just here by myself in this hospital room and somebody thought of me. And the siblings, I remember one day I asked Shea when Jessie was fighting cancer, how you doing? She said, I'm jealous. I'm like, what? She said, well, every time people come by to bring stuff for Jessie, they forget about JT and I. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if this is happening in my home, it's probably happening in others, because parents are doing the best they can to hold their family together and navigate all these treatments. And But super sibs need to be recognized too. And so we have a whole program for super sibs, and we have a program for the parents. And I think it's that idea that it's a one, it's a gift. Two, somebody thought of me. And, three, it's something that they can kind of hold on to. And we've seen kids, receive a couple different ones depending on how long they've stayed in the hospital and stuff, because we change the theme regularly. And they keep smiling. So, that's what I'm addicted to now, is just seeing innocent children fighting cancer smile. Because I miss my daughter's smile. She had a beautiful smile. But being able to see a child in a hospital room hooked up to a bunch of poles and IVs and all that stuff smiling, it does my heart really well.
So you mentioned where you and I met originally. It was at an AT&T conference. It was a big client with a big brand, but with ordinary people doing the work and an awful lot of joy on their faces. So I'm just going to encourage my corporate listeners. I know you're out there, meeting planners and friends. If you're looking for the type of event that will fill your people with joy and make a difference in the lives of others, consider bringing my brother, my friend, a guy like I look up to named Erik Rees, into your event. Erik, where can they learn more about the work you do?
At website, negu.org, NEGU.org, and all the information's there. And I wake up with two goals every day, John: to raise a dollar and reach a kid. And maybe there's a listener that knows of a child that is fighting cancer. And we would be so honored to be able to come alongside of them and encourage them and their family. If you do know of a child fighting cancer, you can nominate them on our website. Again, negu.org, negu.org. And that would be awesome too, because I can't download a database of kids fighting cancer because that violates HIPAA. But we know they're out there. And so every day we got to reach another kid and raise another dollar.
My friend, I could and one day will spend an entire day with you, but unfortunately, this episode it's moving toward its completion. So we're not done making jars of joy quite yet. I think our work is just beginning. I look forward to the next time. We have 7 questions, Erik, that tether all of our mighty guests together. None who has moved me deeper, I don't think, than you and sweet Jessie and her life and her legacy and her joy for others. What an example. What an awesome example in a world that is so self-focused and so angry when we have a bad day or a scar on our face, to continually look out and upward and say, what more can I do for others? What about them, Mom? What about them, Dad? So, my friend, we have 7 questions that tether all of our guests together. The very first one is, what's been the most impactful book you've ever read?
The Bible.
That's a big book. Tell me, within the Bible, is there a book within that book that you're like, John, and my favorite book within that Bible is?
I like the book of Ephesians and the book of Philippians. The idea in Philippians 4:13 that says, I can do all things through Christ. It gives me the strength I need. That's powerful if you really embrace it and live it out and stuff. So there's all kinds of wonderful books I've read over the years and stuff, but the one that I grab on the most frequent basis is the Bible.
What's one positive characteristic or one powerful trait that you possessed as a little kid growing up and you wish you exhibited a little bit more loudly and clearly today in your life?
I don't know. That really stumped me, to be honest. I mean, the first thing that went to my brain was sports, because I just love sports. But that's not really a quality or characteristic. I wish I was playing more basketball these days, but I have herniated discs in my low back, and I can't do that anymore. And I'm getting old. But
Hey, you know what?
um,
I'm gonna take that answer. I think it's the first time we've heard it, but it makes an awful lot of sense. Physical activity, freedom
yeah,
from pain, the ability to take a
yeah,
layup and not reach for my back afterwards.
yes.
So, brother, I don't know who's older. I don't even care, but I feel the pain of doing a layup and landing poorly. So, John, I wish for my youthful vitality to return. If your home caught fire and all living things are out and you have an opportunity of running in and grabbing one item, one physical thing, what's that one thing you would grab?
Jesse's urn.
If you could sit on a bench on a gorgeous day and have a long conversation with anyone living or deceased, who would you like next to you?
My daughter.
What's the
Yep.
first thing you would say to her?
I'm so proud of you. Probably I love you. I miss you. Yeah. I definitely would give anything to have another conversation with her.
Mm. What's the best advice you've ever received?
I think it goes back to what I shared earlier, when I was challenged with only you can be you, and to really give myself permission to marinate my mind on that truth, that I don't have to be somebody I'm not. I can just be me. And from that, great joy, great peace, great fulfillment comes. Yeah, I think that would probably be one of the best pieces of advice that was ever spoken to me.
So I'm preparing for this. I watched some of your old stuff, man. You've been around for a while. I watched a video from, I don't know, 20 years ago, maybe, where you were quoting, it might have been Ephesians, you are his masterpiece.
Ephesians 2:10. Yeah, for we are God's masterpiece, created in his image to do good things.
We are his masterpiece. Only you could be you. What would you tell yourself at age 20? If you could pull that kid by the earlobe, pull him a little closer and offer that 20-year-old version of you a little wisdom, what would you have said to him, Eric?
Study harder.
Right. Don't join that
I don't have a
fraternity.
lot of book smarts, John. I've got some street smarts in me, but I'm not the no, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So I wish I probably would have paid more attention to school early on. But yeah, that's probably what I'd probably tell them. It's like, hey, buddy, pay attention in class and show up to class. It's probably important.
Erik Rees, it has been said that all great people can have their lives summed up in one sentence. How would you like yours to read?
I never ever gave up.
Erik Rees was the kind of man who raised a little girl who taught him a valuable lesson to never, ever give up. And now, through her ministry of NEGU, NEGU, and JoyJars, he has also modeled what it looks like in family, in faith, in grief, and toward healing to never, ever give up. Erik, I want to thank you for teaching that lesson to me, not only in words, but in deed, man.
Oh, John, you're a treasure. I'm so grateful that we were able to connect. And as I texted you, as my new friend, I am just
For
so
sure.
honored to even say I know you, because this is not just two people on a podcast. I truly feel like you're a brother of mine, and I was so inspired when that night I flew from San Diego to Las Vegas for another corporate event, and I got in my room because I just don't like Vegas that much, and watched your film, Soul on Fire, and it was just incredible, incredible, and I can't even fathom what you've gone through. But man, you have never given up when you could have so many different times, and you now are inspiring millions, if not more than millions of people on a probably annual basis to look beyond your circumstances and find joy in the journey. And when I saw you on that stage in San Diego, and I see you right now, you're a man of joy. And
Mm.
that's incredible, knowing what you've gone through.
Hey, well, Erik, apparently you got the email I sent your way before we went live, and I said, read this at the end of the conversation because you read it word for word, just like I wrote it, and you'll be paid appropriately afterwards for that. So, Erik, thank you for being my friend. My friends, thank you for being part of our family. Thank you for tuning into this worthy episode. So, for this time and until next time, my name is John O'Leary. That is my brother, Erik Rees. Today is your day. What a gift. Live with your soul on fire.
Well, family, I told you on the front side of the conversation, you were going to be moved by the story of Erik Rees and his beautiful daughter, Jessie. One of my biggest takeaways from our conversation today was this. Even in the middle of life's hardest moments, you still have something meaningful to give. You still have something meaningful to recognize that you have something to be grateful for. And you still recognize that your life, in spite of where it is and what comes next, can be used in mighty ways for good. Jessie did not wait for her circumstances to change before she chose joy or before she chose generosity. She chose it right there in the hospital room, in the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of pain. She used what she had to lift up others. It's an invitation, I think, that is in front of each of us every day of our lives. What more can I do to lift up those around me in their lives? If you were moved, as I was, by this conversation today, you're going to love the conversation I had a couple of years ago with my friend Jess Ekstrom. As the founder of Headbands of Hope, Jess has turned her own challenges into a movement that impacted children fighting cancer all over the world. Her belief is simple but powerful. Our hardest moments can become the very thing that allows us to make a difference. You can check out that episode with Jess on Live Inspired Podcast, episode 212. I'm sure you all remember that. Or you can let your fingers do the walk and join me online right now, johnolearyinspires.com/podcast. And in today's show notes, I'll have a link to Jess's episode. Family, I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for your life and your willingness to show up week after week, doing the work with us, celebrating the fact that the foundation is firm, that God is still God, and the best is yet to come. So for this time, and until next time, my name is John O'Leary, and today is your day. What a gift. Live with your soul on fire.
Keeley Companies was started almost 50 years ago by the one and only Larry Keeley. What started as a small family-owned paving company in St. Louis has grown to a nationally known full-service construction, development, and restoration partner. Larry the Legend, as he is affectionately known, has been a part of this growth every step of the way and continues to provide guidance as his son Rusty, my buddy, drives their vision and achieves results on purpose. His unwavering foundation of a family culture with a focus on people has gotten Keeley Companies to where they are today, and their journey is truly just beginning. To learn more about Larry the Legend and Keeley Companies, check them out at KeeleyCompanies.com.